I know, there are dozens of Tenet Explained, what actually happens in Tenet videos on YouTube, but I still wanted to do my bit, so at the end of the day, it's my channel, my rules. Maybe you'll be interested in watching it, maybe not. It's a free world, and I just remembered that I live in Russia, so not really, but anyway, let's get started. So basically, why I want to explain it with the help of Doctor Who is because River and the Doctor, they were going quite through the same thing as the main character and Neil. So it looks quite like this. So this is Neil's storyline, and sorry for my drawing skills, the lack of thereof, and this is the protagonist storyline. So initially they meet somewhere here, and protagonist, so this is the first time they meet for Neil, because protagonist already knows him. And here on the timeline they meet for the first time for the protagonist, and for Neil it's not the first time because he already knows him from this point. And so they go kinda in different directions. So for Neil it's like this, and for the protagonist it's like this. So it's basically the same as with the Doctor and River Song in Doctor Who, because they were going through the same thing as I've said. So now if we try to draw the timeline, we have to include like the opera scenes, then Stalsk 12 in Russia. What is also important is the airport scenes in Oslo, and now Tallinn, and the future. We don't know what time Neil comes from, but it's somewhere from the future. So as I've said, it all started with the protagonist recruiting Neil. So they meet for the first time for Neil, and the protagonist sends Neil to the opera. So here Neil is inverted and he waits in this inverted state. Then he uninverts and he helps the protagonist, and he's using an inverted bullet, but he isn't inverted himself. After that he's tortured, but then he is saved again, and he learns about the TENET, this organization. After that he learns about the bullet, Sator, he meets Neil in his timeline, and he searches for Priya, blah blah blah. And then we come to this point in Oslo. So here he tries to steal the painting from the Freeport, and he fights himself, and Neil actually stops him from killing himself. So there are two versions of the protagonist and two versions of Neil. And the second protagonist, the inverted one, fights himself, as it turns out, and the second Neil, the inverted Neil, he saves Cat from dying. Then they steal part of the algorithm, and we come to the Tallinn scenes on the highway, and this is where it all gets complicated. So on the highway we see the protagonist who is not inverted, then the protagonist who is actually inverted, and this protagonist, he knows that Sator was successful in stealing the last part of the algorithm, and he tries to prevent it, and in fact he causes it, because as we know, this version of the protagonist gets interrogated. So from here Sator already knows where part of the algorithm is. So as we see here, from where the protagonist is caught, non-inverted Sator interrogates him, and he kinda already knows where the algorithm is. And after that Sator gets inverted, and he goes with Cat on the highway in the inverted car. So this is basically how he knows where to look. So after all of these events in Tallinn, they get inverted, all three of them, Cat, protagonist, and Neil. They get inverted and they go to Oslo. Then they uninvert again, and all of the events in Oslo happen. After that they are again inverted, and they go to Stalsk/Vietnam. So Neil and the protagonist, they go to Stalsk, and Cat goes to Vietnam. I think with the events in Vietnam it's pretty obvious what happened. So like the Cat, the initial Cat, she leaves the yacht, and the inverted Cat that already got uninverted, she comes to the yacht and she kills Sator, and then the first Cat sees herself jumping from the yacht. But what happens in Stalsk is rather complicated again. I remind myself of Robert Pattinson, who also said that he didn't understand half of the movie while filming it, and only while he was watching it he understood a bit of it. So in Stalsk we have the protagonist, who is not inverted, and here we have events that happen simultaneously in an inverted timeline, and here we have an inverted Neil. So he goes halfway here, and at the same time as the protagonist goes into the bunker, the Neil sees that they will like get stuck, get locked inside. So he drives back and then inverts himself, and somewhere here he pulls them out. He pulls them out and they say their goodbye, which is really sad. Like, I really loved their friendship. But at the same time he learns that he could be the only one to open the door for them because the door was locked, and he inverts himself again, and he goes here, for example, at this point. So at this point he's inverted Neil. He goes inside the bunker again, unlocks the door, and dies in process. But for the protagonist, for example, it looked like he was like, he saw Neil dead, and after that, like, Neil saved the protagonist again, and he goes and opens the door. So for him it was something like this. And we also have to talk about the future a little bit, because it is also rather complicated. So here we have the past, where all of the events of the film happen, and here we have 20 years into the future. And at that time the scientist creates their turnstile technology, but then she realizes that this technology can lead to like the temporal limbo and really awful consequences. So sends inverted people to the past with parts of this algorithm, and they bury the algorithm. And so here we don't have this turnstile technology anymore. But 300 years into the future we have the world dying, and so people like want to rediscover the turnstiles technology, and they send messages back to the past. They somehow, I don't know actually how, but they know that the algorithm was buried somewhere at this point, and they need someone from the past to find the algorithm to reverse the restrictions. After a lot of planning, they choose Satyr and send him gold, which he finds when he is like a little boy. And so they communicate something like this, because Satyr like buries something they need, they get it in their time, and then like 1 minute later he can start digging in the same place and he gets what they like buried for him, like the inverted gold. So that's how they communicate. I gotta say, I need to watch this film one more time because it's hella complicated, and I watched it only once, but I think that is actually what happened, and I hope you understood it more with my explanations, sometimes rushed ones.
Still working that out, to be honest, but you know, you kind of fake it till you make it.
Anyway, if you're good in physics, let me know in the comments what you think happened and how this could have happened. I will be really interested in reading this. There is also a theory that Neil is Max, Kat's son, and it sounds pretty valid, but I tend to believe that they're just long-term friends, because the fact that he is her son doesn't change that much, at least for me, so why the heck does it matter? And all bitter sweetness of this moment comes from the fact that they're like long-term friends, and for Robert Pattinson's character it's like goodbye forever, but for the protagonist it's just the beginning, so it's not a goodbye and they will meet again. And also a lot of people thought that the phrase "you have future in the past" or something like this, it was referring to like Neil being Max, because they met like in the past, but then they met again in the future. But I think he was referring to the fact that the protagonist is experiencing them being friends already, and like the Tenet already existed in the past, although he created it in the future, so he basically has the future in the past. Let me know what you think about all these theories, and like, did you like the film in general? Who was your favorite character? Mine, for sure, Robert Pattinson's character, and Robert Pattinson was phenomenal. I never thought that I would say that, so definitely let me know your thoughts. And if you haven't seen the movie yet, what are you doing here? And second, go watch it right now. It's already in cinemas, but be safe because the pandemic is not over yet, and like, going to the cinema maybe is not the best to do right now, but I just thought that Christopher Nolan is totally worth it, so Anyway, have a nice day and never stop watching great movies and TV shows.